Hello, good evening. I'm Joel Meadows, editor-in-chief of tripwiremagazine.co.uk, and you're listening to Mr. Media with Bob Andelman.
I'm Bob Andelman, and this is a Mr. Media interview. You can see, hear, and read more than 1,000 of my previous celebrity interviews at MrMedia.com. That's MRmedia.com. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, iTunes, Apple News, Google Play, or Stitcher, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. On today's show, I'll welcome Joel Meadows, editor of Tripwire, the UK magazine of comic books, science fiction, and genre TV and film. The magazine is celebrating its 25th year of print and online publication. Stick around. Zines dedicated to comic books, science fiction, and genre TV shows and films come and go pretty quickly around the world. They all start with a singular dedication, perhaps obsession, but most vanish in the face of the long hours, hard work, little or no compensation, and an equal amount of recognition. And then there is Tripwire, the UK's enduring cornucopia of interviews, reviews, analysis, and previews of everything from Marvel and DC Comics to James Bond, Doctor Who, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Dredd, and much, much more. Tripwire is celebrating its 25th anniversary in print and online in 2017, a phenomenal accomplishment by any media survival standard. And remaining at its helm for the entire quarter century is its editor and founder, Joel Meadows, whom I'm honored to call a personal friend for almost 4 years. This is his second appearance on the show. Joel Meadows, welcome back to Mr. Media.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for having me.
Always good to see you. I think back to that just by accident meal that we shared together, and here we are. We're still talking. We communicate pretty frequently. Um, Take me back to the beginning, 1992. What prompted the launch of Tripwire?
Well, it was very interesting. I had a former neighbour and a former friend of mine who lived on the same road that I did with my parents, and he bemoaned the lack of a decent sort of comics and music fanzine. And so it sort of started there. We started off as a very primitive A4 um, uh, stapled magazine that was fairly primitive, as I say, that we used to just produce at a local copy shop. We did 1 or 200 copies, and it basically flourished from there.
It was black and white, maybe with one color, I'm guessing,
It
at
was
that
black
time?
and white. Yeah, you got it exactly right. It was black and white, but it had a single color cover on the front. I don't have any to hand, unfortunately, but yes, it was, and so it was fairly basic. But we only just started. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we were having fun doing it.
And what was in the first issue?
The very first issue was our poorly executed Lobo pun. It was a Simon Bisley image of Lobo's back, and it was supposed to read Lobo's back, but because I was a young man and I didn't understand the pun, we called it Lobo is back, so that didn't actually work. So that was in February of 1992. So it was mainly reviews. It was fairly sarcastic reviews written by myself. As I said, I was younger then. We got a bit of a reputation for doing things like that. So we had that, and then we had a Pete Milligan interview in the second one, which had Brian Bolland. There was a comic called Showcase that DC brought back, which is an anthology title, which had a Brian Bolland cover. So we had that and a Pete Milligan interview, and we had the best and worst mature comics of all time in the second issue, which didn't win us that many fans because we were rather critical of certain comics. So as I said, we built up a reputation, which we did divest ourselves of being slightly sarcastic to begin with.
So the sarcasm is gone?
Well, it hasn't. Well, it has gone in the way that in '92 I was only 19 years old, and since then, I worked as a professional journalist for a number of well, for pretty much every single major publication from Time to the Times, the Independent on Sunday. So I realised that the sarcasm isn't necessarily a professional way to behave. So it may still be there in the background, but it's perhaps not the most professional way to proceed these days.
When did it start? When did it start building? When did you start, kind of growing the look, at becoming a little more professional, a little more professional? Start getting noticed by maybe the comics publishers or the networks or the film studios. What
Well, I
was
mean,
that?
our first color issue was our fifth anniversary, which had a there was a comic drawn by Frank Quitely called 2020 Visions that Vertigo published, and Vince did a four-image cover for us, which is our very first full color issue. And we had introduction by Grant Morrison in that issue. We had interviews on Sandman Mystery Theatre, thing on 2020 Visions, and that was a 48-page issue. It was the first color cover that we produced, and it was a quite ambitious magazine. So I guess you could point to that, for the first after the first 5 years that we started to get more and more notice with that.
And was the magazine was it then, and maybe it is now? Were you basically supporting it, or was it supporting you?
Well, it was financially, it wasn't. Well, I mean, we started to pick up a little bit of advertising not long after that, but at that point, it was still a little bit of a hobby. It wasn't really supporting me. I wasn't, earning from it. I was doing it as kind of a labour of love, really. But we did get some nice exclusives. Had a James Robinson interview in that as well as the Sam Mystery Theatre stuff. So we were getting a little bit of a name, but it wasn't quite paying its own way at that point.
What is it that drove you to keep doing it, even to the fifth anniversary? You're not making money from it. At first, the sarcasm was turning people off. What kept you going? Why didn't you just say, "Oh, you know, the heck with it"?
I guess because I got to really enjoy doing it. I mean, there was one interesting story. I was at university. I'm trying to think if this was after that. Actually, it was before that. I taught myself how to use Quark Express, which is, as you probably are familiar, is a now not defunct, but a program that people don't use very often for putting magazines together. But I taught myself Quark, and I was able to put a magazine together. But the degree that I was on criticised me and said it was just a vanity project. But by this point, I got to really enjoy putting the magazine together. I got a real kick out of it. I used to enjoy seeing an issue come back, and I found it very satisfying. And I thought I had a bit of an aptitude for it, and so I thought, what the hell, I would continue with it.
I we have a little bit in common here. When I was a little younger than when you started this, when I was a teen in the mid '70s,
Yes,
I was involved with a fanzine. I'm just going to call it a
yes,
fanzine. Not even a magazine. It was a fanzine. But a lot of them, and this particular one, we did, and I think the thing that keeps you going is that when people respond. But it
yes,
also,
exactly.
tell me, what I'm curious is, did you find that you were able to kind of stretch doing Tripwire in ways that maybe you couldn't, uh, maybe if you were freelancing, writing, or I know you do freelance editing as well, you could kind of stretch your ambition, stretch your experience.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there was a two-part interview that we did where we got Grant Morrison to talk to Simon Bisley, and it was this bizarre stream of consciousness interview we called the Bisley Morrison tapes, which was endlessly entertaining. We could have probably run it for about 6 or 7 issues, but we only ran it for two, whereas the two of them basically just rambling on about interesting but rather bizarre subjects. And it's the kind of thing that if you pitched it to well, God, especially in the mid 90s, to a magazine or a newspaper, they would have looked at you like you were crazy, and they would have probably put the phone down at this point. So yeah, I would agree that it definitely facilitated a lot of stuff, that we wouldn't. I mean, the Grant Morrison introduction that we got for our fifth anniversary issue, that came out because when I was, let me think, before Tripwire, I would read a magazine called Speakeasy. I'm not sure if I made it over to the States, but it was a very snarky British comics magazine. And they used to have columns from Grant Morrison and Mark Miller and loads of people. And it was a sort of a template for us. And I was very taken with Speakeasy. And I used it as a little bit of as I said, a little bit of a template for Tripwire.
I found just a few weeks ago there was a fanzine in the '70s that I worked for called Compass,
Yes,
and interesting thing. I met a guy named Tony Cialis through that, who
yes.
I give a lot of credit to the fact that I even have a career, because he took this 16, 15, 16-year-old kid. We met once in that whole time, and let me do all kinds of interviews. And what I found, the reason I mention this is, I just reposted my 40-year-old interview with George Perez, the
Wow,
comic
that's
book artist.
amazing.
Yeah, and
How does it feel to read it now?
thank you for asking me that, because I would love to say
Well, I'm
it.
curious.
On the whole, I was pretty proud of it, because I asked pretty good questions, and what you learn as you get older is the key to good questions is to listen to the previous answer,
Exactly.
right? So I asked surprisingly good questions. There were a few things that embarrassed me, just youthful indiscretions. But
Yes.
you know what
Yeah.
was most embarrassing?
What?
Compass. Tony had this habit of trying to save space, so there were
Hmm.
a lot of words that we had a list of words that could be shortened. Like, yeah, I mean, like through, instead of THROUGH, it would be THRU.
Oh, okay.
There were a lot of those things, and it was just funny to see that. And so when I reposted it, well, posted it for the first time, and since
Yes.
it was published in 1976, I had to go through and correct those because
Okay.
people were just going to think I was an idiot. Sorry,
I mean,
Tony.
the first comic person I interviewed when I was at sixth form college, which was before Tripwire, was Alan Grant. You know, the
Sure.
guy that used to write Lobo and Batman, and that was in 1989, and that was when I was still at sixth form college. And I saw him again. Unfortunately, he's not that. He's got a few health problems these days. But I saw him at the 2000 AD thing, and it was very nice to see him. And I was thinking, what's scary is that interview was 28 years ago, and it was before the magazine, but I was at college. I was at Barnet College, sixth form, what you call sixth form college over here. It was the very first interview I had ever done.
Hmm. Yeah, just personally, I mean, I feel like I owe a great deal to comics and the whole fanzine society, essentially, because
Yes.
I got to do a lot of things, and then from comics, I went off to college, and first interview that I did was Frank Zappa, which I was
Wow. Well, that's
woefully
pretty
unprepared
amazing.
for. Yeah, but it's been interesting ever since. Tell me, so we got to the. Let's come back to you because I could,
Okay.
we made it to the fifth anniversary, and I know the last time we talked, you gave kind of a primer on Tripwire, but nonetheless, talk a little bit about kind of the high points going forward to 25, if you would. Just
Yes, of course. Well, I mean, I guess obviously there was the first issue with the Lobo pun, which didn't work. And then we had our first color cover, which was the Frank Quietly one in '97. And then we moved on. We were going to do a 99p or $1.75 little comic sized black and white monthly, but that didn't prove well. We did one issue with a mage cover, and that didn't sort of continue. But then we switched to bi-monthly after that, and we had regular color covers. So we do thematic covers, like we did a cover with Alex Ross's Uncle Sam,
mhm.
and we did it with a Stars and Stripes logo. We would start to play with the look of the magazine. We started to be a little bit more ambitious and to just to stretch the envelope a bit in terms of the look of the mag. So we went through a number of different logos from that. So with color cover, we had our disastrous two color issues in 2003 because we were scuppered by our distributor. So we did two full color magazines for about 100 pages each. We did through the UK newsstand, but that didn't prove to be that successful a move. But it was an experiment. I think we were ahead of our time. So there was that. We did our 10th anniversary book with an Ashley Wood Batman cover back in 2002, which I'm still quite proud of because we reprinted stuff. There was a load of new material. We commissioned a load of art from people like Jock, Fraser Irving, and a load of people I can't even remember. I think we had a Frank Miller piece and Tim Sale. So there was that. And then there was the 21st anniversary book. I guess I'm jumping around a little bit here. And then there was the digital, which didn't quite work out. But then there's been the website for the last 2 years, which actually has been, it's been proving to be a really great fertile ground. And we're able to do things like run audio and video, which we would never been able to do in a million years in print. And it feels quite liberating. Actually, the website, the last 2 years, it's felt like we're getting to do things we could never have done before.
You probably thought it would be easier compared to the production work that goes into a magazine, but I imagine
Well,
it's
it's
not.
easier but far more time consuming
Yeah,
because you have to update the thing on a regular basis. You have to feed the beast
yeah.
pretty regularly for people to keep coming back.
So how often is there new content on the website?
Well, it's between sort of 10 to 15 times a day, depending on what's happening.
Oh my God.
So a lot, a hell of a lot. I do try and update, and this month because it's our 25th anniversary month, and in fact February the 28th is officially our 25th anniversary. So that's this Tuesday. So I've been putting up Tripwire 25 interviews. So I've been putting up classic interviews with the likes of Will Eisner, Joe Kubert, Frank Miller, Karen Berger, a load of people I've been going through and representing stuff because I thought, we want to celebrate the anniversary, and this is one way that we're doing it.
Stan Lee. I saw Stan
And
Lee.
Stan Lee, exactly. We've got a
Yeah.
great interview by a guy called Pat McGreal, which goes all the way back to Stan Lee to the beginning of his career and holds up as still a very interesting interview.
You got to mention Stan because he's the one guy of that group who will probably find this interview and say, "Wait a minute, you didn't mention me. How could you
Yes, no,
forget the
you're
great
absolutely
me?"
right.
um, was there a time when suddenly, or maybe gradually, the comics publishers, the studios, that type of thing, they took notice and they started cooperating with you?
Well, comic publishers probably started quite early because when we started, comic publishers were, I think it's fair enough to say, were less corporate when they started. Now, DC and Marvel, because of the changing, mood of the industry and the way that things have changed, they are more corporate. They're more in sync with Hollywood. But DC and Marvel and Dark Horse, and we've had a good relationship with them for years. But the studios, I've been going to press screenings for years. I've never encountered so many, but for the last 20 years. And we're starting to get good traction with places like Disney, because Disney seems to own almost everything now, because obviously they own Star Wars and they own Indiana Jones, they own all the Marvel movies. So we do get pretty good, in terms of our relationship with the studios. They've been pretty generous to us over the last few years, especially with the website. Well, certainly from the first year onwards, from the first 12 months of the website onwards, it certainly has started to pick up.
Well, of course, with the website, you can embed all kinds of things that you couldn't share before. You could, for example, I know that I was very excited in the last week or two to see the previews for Iron Fist from
Yes, we
Netflix
did
program.
exactly. We get content direct from places like Netflix. We're on their mailing lists, which is wonderful. Obviously, which is extremely useful for us. I mean, I'm often hunting YouTube for interesting interviews with people, and that's the beauty of the net now, is that you can find content that you would never have had access to prior to its existence.
Yeah, it's amazing, and you can place the Iron Fist trailers up on your site, and people can see them.
Precisely,
Yeah,
exactly.
things that didn't know. So we talked about some highlights. Tell me about some of the lowlights, some of the tough moments when maybe you felt the magazine was threatened, or or maybe you just wanted to throw in the towel. I don't know if that ever
Well, there
happened.
were a couple of occasions. I mean, there's one occasion where we had a Dark Knight Strikes Again cover, but we weren't guaranteed an interview with Frank Miller. And I was thinking, God, what do we do? This is if we can't get hold of him, what do we do? But we had stuff in place. We did get an interview in the end, but it was touch and go. So that was going to jeopardize the issue, but it worked out fine in the end. And actually, it was quite a strong issue. It was one of our best sellers for the direct market. It sold a couple of thousand copies just through the direct market. So there was that. And the other time where we didn't throw in the towel, but we did take a break, actually. We took a 4-year break. The two colour issues that I mentioned were, as I said, they didn't work out that well. So we did actually pull the plug on the magazine for 4 years. Between that and 2007, we came back with our annual format, which is our full colour once a year annual, which we did for I think 4 or 5 years. And that was, I went off and I did other stuff and I built up my contacts list again. So actually, we came back after the 4-year break, much stronger actually. Interestingly, but we had a meeting people about taking over the magazine, and that was just completely disastrous, and it wasn't going to work, and it didn't. So.
So I know you primarily make your living writing and editing and photography. Actually, since we met, the photography's become a very big part of your
Yes.
life. But I have to ask because for me, Mr. Media is what Tripwire is for you. It's this. In retail, I think they would call it a loss leader. It's this thing
Yes.
you keep feeding this beast. It doesn't really feed you in return, but there's just something about it. What I'm wondering is, so when you're doing the paying work, when you're doing the real work of your life,
Yes.
do you nonetheless feel the pull of, I really wish I could just be working on Tripwire right
Well, of course, yes. I mean, there was a time, I think when I was working at Time Magazine, I'd arranged a Matt Groening interview. And I think this might have been, when was this, about 2007. I wasn't doing tons of work. But there was one occasion where I was very quiet at one of my freelance gigs, and I was transcribing a Kevin Smith interview for us while I was freelancing, because there wasn't very much freelance work. So I thought, what the hell, I had the audio with me. So I thought that was for an English magazine. This was a number of years ago. So, no, I mean, I enjoy it, and I do get stats. Like, over the last, even just with the website, we've put some really interesting interviews up. I got to interview Chuck Palahniuk, because he did the Fight Club 2 comic. We did a telephone interview with him. We did an email interview with Philip Pullman, talking about his strip for The Phoenix, the British anthology comic. Del Toro on the Phone, that was a comic mart talking about Crimson Peak back in 2015. So I mean, highlights. There's a hell of a lot of people that there's probably people I've forgotten about who I've spoken to. When I interviewed Harlan Ellison, that was actually for someone else. That was for the Big Issue in the North, but that was by his comic project he did for DC. So there's a lot of highlights. There are a lot of people that I'm really proud that I've got to speak to them.
Well, so let's look ahead as we kind of start winding down. What is big in genre spaces for 2017 that you just can't wait to see, whether it's print or film or TV? What are you excited about?
Well, I mean, it's ridiculous. There's so much. I mean, I have to say it is a golden age for genre material. I mean, April, you've got another series of Fargo starting, which I have to say is one of my favorite TV programs. You've got Better Call Saul, which I enjoy a lot. Last Christmas, I blitzed through Westworld, which I was very impressed with. And there's a second series of that, which won't be this year. It'll be next year because it's a very expensive series to produce. I mean, this year is just insane. I mean, you've got the Alien prequel, you've got the Blade Runner sequel. There's just a whole host of film and TV. It's completely crazy. I mean, it seems like everything is dominated now by comics or genre.
See, I thought maybe you were going to say Star Wars movie or.
Well, I mean, we have to cover those.
The Defenders.
Well, Defenders, I'm curious. I mean, the Marvel stuff, I really enjoyed the first series of Daredevil. The second one, I enjoyed a little bit less. So I have to say, I thought Bernthal was a great choice as the Punisher. I thought he was actually a very good choice. Iron Fist, I'm curious about, although I was a bit disappointed with Luke Cage, if I'm honest.
It seemed like it could have been 8 episodes instead of.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, there are things. I mean, I'm curious. In fact, there's a couple of things that were announced. There was a Hulu series that Stephen King is working on with J.J. Abrams called Castle Rock, which they've released very little about, which I'm obviously curious because Abrams is such a juggernaut of genre entertainment, and Stephen King is Stephen King, so that's going to be really fascinating to see what that is.
A couple more short questions.
Yes, of course.
We were getting ready to go here. I scribbled some things to myself. Why do you think that Doctor Who has crossed the Atlantic so successfully when something that's so popular in the UK, like Dread, has never made it successfully across the pond?
That's an interesting question. I mean, obviously for decades, Doctor Who wasn't popular in the States, and then you had the reboot with Eccleston, and suddenly everything clicked. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe there's a huge appetite for genre television and film and genre content. But that's a good question. Why hasn't Dread? I don't know. That's a very fair question. I don't know actually. Obviously, because Dread celebrates its 40th anniversary, or 2000 AD has its 40th anniversary this year. Dread still feels like quite a cult thing, whereas Doctor Who is insanely huge in the US. I remember we went to San Diego in 2008. We got to see people cosplaying as Doctor Who for the first time that I'd ever seen, and I was pretty impressed. So it's a good question. I'm afraid I don't know what the answer is.
It's funny. Speaking of Doctor Who, the evening that we met for dinner was the night that Peter Capaldi was introduced on BBC
that's right, yes.
worldwide. And now as we're talking, we've come to the end of that cycle, and he'll be leaving. We don't know who the next Doctor Who is going to be yet. Do you want to take a shot at it here? And
well, there's been talk of a woman, which I wouldn't have a problem with, or a man of color, like African, Afro-Caribbean man, or that, which could be interesting. I'm talking about Patterson Joseph. I think Idris Elba he's too big a kind of film star now, so I don't think he'd do it. I'm just talking about him for Bond, obviously. I don't know. I mean, why not have a female Doctor Who? I mean, it's been running for decades, so maybe it's time. In terms of predictions, I mean, it seems pretty wide open. It could be anyone, not anyone, but it does seem pretty wide in terms of who they'll pick.
Okay, all right. Just thought I'd check. Now, I mentioned the Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
Which I guess, because it's been around so long, I'm assuming you're familiar with.
Oh yes, I've seen quite a few of them.
So, do the jokes translate overseas?
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of them are fairly international. I mean, they're about sort of geek culture, but I've read American comics since I was about 7 or 8, so a lot of it, yeah, a lot of it does translate.
And Is there any genre that's big here in the States that you just have looked at over the years and just scratched your head and said, "Boy, I don't know what they see in that. That is just the biggest waste of time."
Well, it's not a genre, but I have to admit, I'm not a huge fan of manga in general. And I will say that I do like, I've always liked Akira and I like Lone Wolf and Cub. But generally, I find manga a hard work for me to really connect with.
All right, fair enough. So what's next for Tripwire for the next 25 years?
Well, I mean, at least for the next few months, we're planning two anniversary books. We're doing Tripwire's 25 Greatest Hits, which will have 25 classic interviews, which we're going to be doing through Amazon's Create Space, and also the Alan Moore interviews, which is going to be a selection of interviews with Moore that we've done for the magazine over the last few years. So there'll be that. We're planning some sort of events and hopefully some sort of conventions and things, mainly over in the UK, but we're still finalising that, and just keep on building. I mean, the website, I've been very, very cheered. I've been buoyed by the reception the website's been getting, that we're now able to replicate the Tripwire experience. That Barton Fink, that Tripwire feeling, hopefully online. So hopefully we'll just keep building on that and keep on. I want more originated material that we commission ourselves, because ideally I'd like to get to the point where the majority of the material on the website is stuff that we've created ourselves, because I'd rather do that. I mean, just for pragmatism's sake at the moment we can't do that, but down the line I would love to be able to have a lot more original material.
Very good. All right. Well, folks, listen, you can find Joel Meadows' Tripwire on the web at tripwiremagazine.co.uk. That's .co.uk, no .com, you American fools. Are you? So that's the website. Are you and the magazine on Twitter or Facebook? Any of those?
Yes, I'm on my Twitter handle is the imaginative Joel Meadows 1, and on Facebook it's just Tripwire Mag. So people can find us. People feel free to check out, because we do post stuff on Tripwire Mag, and on Twitter we do reshare stuff, give people the opportunity if they've missed pieces that we're particularly proud of. We try and give people the opportunity to check those things out. So yes, we're fairly regular on social media.
Very good, very good. Well, Joel Meadows, my friend, it's great to see you.
Well, likewise, thank you very much.
Congratulations on 25 years of success and 25 more. And as always, thank you for joining us on Mr. Media today.
Bob, thanks very much.
To believe her, a bad idea to believe her. Turn up the stereo receiver. Turn up the stereo receiver.
Mr. Media is recorded live before a studio audience full of international fanboys who swear they get all the jokes in the Big Bang Theory in the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida.
Hi, this is Rich Scheidner. And if you've ever wondered what it was like to be a stand-up comedian in the 1980s, I'm going to do you a big favor. Instead of billions of dollars for a time machine, you can just spend $24.95 and buy my new book, Kicking Through the Ashes, My Life as a Stand-Up in the 1980s Comedy Boom. It will save you money and give you thrills. It will take you there. Go to my website, richscheidner.com, go to amazon.com, and buy this book.